Hello, everyone. Everyone who's joining us today. My name is Kudana Gwatidzo, and today I'm here to give you a presentation with GTL on advice for applying to colleges, specifically with an emphasis on common applications, selecting schools, the overall timeline of the college application process, as well as what to do with essays and common parts, which a lot of people tend to struggle with when it comes to college applications. So a bit of background about me. My full name is Kudana Gwatidzo. I'm a rising sophomore at Harvard University who is currently majoring in computer science and government. On the side, I study cloud architecture and engineering. In terms of a bit of my international background, I've spent half of my life in the United States and the other half in Zimbabwe. So I've had experience being in American institutions as well as being an international student in other educational curriculums, such as Cambridge A-level and a little bit of experience with the IB program. In terms of my college application background, I did Cambridge A-level and the SATs as testing credentials. I applied to 25 colleges, which is way too many, by the way. And hopefully what I'm here to do is I'm here to give advice, reflect on some of the mistakes I made during the college application process and what I struggle with, and help you apply to college regardless of what stage you're in. The picture that you see on the right, that's the list of the colleges which I ended up getting accepted into. So I can help you understand a little bit more about each application, especially in one of the schools listed here, but also in college applications in the United States in general. So today's webinar, we're sort of covering 9 things. Here's the timeline: mindset, timeline, picking colleges, getting help, testing, essays, financial aid, sending the college application, and then we'll finally have Q&A at the end. I'm not able to see the Teams chat at this stage, but does anyone have any questions? Yuta, I'll leave it to you if anyone has any questions midway through the presentation.
Sure, yeah. I'll let you know if somebody has any questions. Meanwhile, you can post your questions on the chat, or you can raise your hand, and then I can let Kudana know that you have questions. So feel free to ask any questions that you have in the middle of the presentation. We want to make it as interactive as possible.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. So one of the first core parts about the college application process is mindset. And I think we need to start there. Often when people start applying to colleges, they get in this really, really strong zone of being comparative, comparing what they're doing to other people. And the college application process is one of the worst time periods to be able to start, is one of the worst times to start beating yourself up over things which have happened in the past. Regardless of where you're coming from, whether you have a perfect GPA or you failed your most recent classes, college applications isn't about saying, okay, I'm not good enough, so I can't apply to college. College applications are about applying yourself and presenting yourself in the best light. It's about showing what makes you great. You don't need to be perfect to go to college. No one can be. I promise you, there's about 30 people who've won Olympic gold medals, maybe 2 people who are about to cure some radical disease, and then there's everyone else. It is okay to not be perfect or not be some superhuman. Applying to college is about what's making you great. On that note, applying to college, when I talk about showing what makes you great, imperfections can also be something that makes you great, which is very important. While you don't need to think of yourself as a perfect human being, you also don't need to present yourself as a perfect human being. I'll use my case, for example. Many of the things which I demonstrated in my college application wasn't just, oh, I got an A in this class or I got an A in this class, but discussing experiences of, hey, this was my experience when I almost failed a class. These are the things which I have struggled with before in high school. It's really good because it helps create a better picture more of you as a real student, and your imperfections show what type of human being you are and often give you more credit as a student than trying to say, oh, I'm perfect in high school, I like did everything perfectly, and there's no problem which I've ever struggled with, and this has all been a breeze. Presenting yourself in the best light is about being confident about you and being confident about your imperfections as well, and presenting that all in the most positive way that you can. And that means two things. That means first, you have to not be afraid to talk about yourself. College applications are the one place where I'd say that being modest isn't exactly the best play here. They want to learn more about you, so you shouldn't be afraid to talk more about yourself and reveal parts of yourself in college applications. You don't need to keep anything hidden. It could be the most niche activity in the world, which you might think that nobody cares about as a side hobby. Put it in your college application, because the person who wants to read your college application wants to learn as much about you as you possibly can. And the second part is that your college application should be cohesive. It should try to cover the most parts of your life as you can. We'll break this down a little more when we go into essays, but when you're doing college application, essays or little segments, each segment should show a different part of your life. If your college applicant wanted to know about your grades, they're going to go to your high school transcript, to your report card. If they want to know about your sports, they're going to look at your little extracurricular form. So when you're showing then these other parts of your college application, you want to show the person who's reading your college application something they don't know about you before. So those are the three big pillars about college applications: presenting yourself in a positive way, showing as much as yourself as possible, and showing the cohesive picture of yourself, revealing different parts of your character each time. If you can do that, you'll put yourself in a really strong position where the person who's reading your college application is going to get a good sense of who you are as an individual, what makes you unique and special, and you're way more likely to get accepted into a college than trying to compare yourself to someone else and trying to make yourself into someone that you're not. No one can be you better than you. So if you focus on who you are as an individual, your chances of a successful college application are always going to increase. Now, what does this look like? We have different components to the college application. And the first one of the components is obviously the grade component. While the grade component varies from person to person and shouldn't be your end-all be-all, obviously by having standardized testing, it's a way to add a grade component to your college application. So in terms of timeline, this is what this looks like. Everyone is able right now, if you'll be applying to college next year, to usually take the SAT between March, July, and October. And then in November, you have early action or early decision deadlines. Some colleges will allow you to apply to a college earlier and get the college application result earlier. And this is what early application and early decision is. In comparison, regular decision allows you to submit your college application later and then get the results much later. So early action, you usually submit in November and you'll get the results in 1 month by December. Regular action, you usually submit the application by January and you get the results by April, so 4 months later. While the wait often makes students feel like, okay, I need to apply in November because I don't want to do the 1 month wait, one thing I really want to stress that's really important in your college application is timeline. You want to make your college application the best it can be when we talk about presenting yourself in the best light. If your college application won't be ready by November, there isn't a need to apply by November. If your current life is going normal, but in between November and December, you know that you're going to have this amazing project, which is finally going to be finished and out to the world that you really want to demonstrate to everyone, or something that you always do in November and December that's really special is going to happen, by all means, feel free to wait until January or the regular decision deadlines. You should always apply when your application is most ready. What that often means for most people is actually if your test scores or your academics aren't so good right now, but you're very confident that you'll be getting a better SAT score in late October or late December because you've practiced more or you've studied more, then you might also want to pick regular decision because your grades might be in a better standing than they were earlier. One final thing to stress though about timeline, you can look here to this slide to get the dates of when tests are available. It's that it's never too late to start applying to colleges. So for whatever reason, please don't feel like you're seeing the dates on the screen and thinking, I'm panicking, I need to buy an SAT textbook right away, I need to do X, Y, Z. There are always colleges who are looking for new people through rolling admissions who are taking people and students on a regular basis. There are colleges which take students for the spring semester, so end up taking students later on and as a result have a moved application. More and more colleges every day are dropping the SAT requirement and are allowing you just to apply with the report cards and your grades from high school. So while
actually have a question about the SAT component, and I don't know if the other participants have it too, but do you think it's a good idea to take the SAT anyway? Like sometimes it's optional, but do you think that the college prefers students who have taken the SAT and have like a strong score over those who have not taken the SAT, despite the fact that it's optional for those schools?
my personal recommendation would be to take the SAT.
Hmm.
The main reason being for international students specifically, my experience is that when you're coming from an international background, while of course they understand your report cards, it's not every single school is going to have the staff or the faculty or the experience with your international curriculum. So let's say if you're applying to a local state school in the United States, and I'm going to use me as an example, I'm a student from Zimbabwe. They might not necessarily understand Zimbabwean testing standards, Zimbabwean grading regulations. Maybe my country has more strict grading than traditionally in other countries, or different academic requirements or grade interpretations. Like in some curriculums, a 70% might be an A in a specific subject, whereas in the US, a 70 is going to be just a bare pass.
That's correct.
Some schools may have knowledge about that curriculum, but the benefit of doing standardized testing in some form is that it becomes much easier for college applications to set a benchmark of, okay, this is where they're at from an academic perspective. While
Mhm.
necessarily doesn't need to be SAT or ACT, like there's also Cambridge A level and IB, which are also very widely accepted. Standardized testing results are very important. I think I saw a question
Yeah.
in the chat.
And there are two people who have raised their hands as well. Dinara, we'll get back to you. The first question we have here is that do we have to submit all the SAT scores that we have taken? Let's say I have taken 5 SAT tests. Do I have to submit all the SAT scores?
Dinara, great question.
This question is by Chinmaya. We'll
Oh,
get to Dinara after this.
by Chimay. Sorry, my apologies. Great question. This policy varies from school to school. When you're looking at the website of the school that you want to apply for, you should search for information called SAT testing policy. And different schools have different approaches. Some schools want you to submit every single SAT which you have done. Other schools would like you just to submit the best SATs that you've done before. But this will vary from school to school, and there is no universal answer. All the information, though, will be found under the testing policy part of the school application websites. So I would encourage you to look there, but this will vary from school to school.
Mm-hmm. And Dinara, go ahead with your question. You can unmute yourself. Yeah.
Is it true that if you apply to Harvard and Stanford at the same time, both will reject?
No, absolutely not true. And I'm a perfect example. Even though it's not on the board, I applied to Harvard and Stanford both at the same time, and I got in to both schools. There is, however, one regulation. Some schools have early decision, and some schools have early action. Oh, sorry, actually, let's break down into this topic real quick. Early action and early decision are very unique forms of application because some forms of college application are what are called binding applications. Binding meaning once you apply, you have to obey certain rules to the school. If you take an early decision one, the binding requirement is that if it's usually called early decision, they expect you to go to that school if you get in, that you might not be able to say no if it's early decision. If it's early action, there's two different types. There's free early action and restrictive early action. Free early action, you can apply early action to one school, you can apply early action to another school and another school and another school. If a school has restrictive early action, they will tell you if you early action to our school, you can't early action to another school. So I do know one of the examples of this, if I'm not mistaken, might be MIT. I'll try to check for you maybe during the larger Q&A section on Harvard and Stanford specifically. And there's websites out there. In fact, actually, the better thing that I'll do during Q&A is I'll pull up the list of which schools have restricted early action. But in regards to that rumor, I think that's with regards to if you apply early action to one, then you shouldn't apply early action to the other. Now, that doesn't mean the schools aren't doing like communication and they're not DMing each other like, yo, Stanford, did this student apply to Harvard as well? Really? Okay, kick him out. But it does mean that if for whatever reason they do find out and there was a regulation in place, that is not allowed. But in terms of regular decision and regular action, it is open season. You can apply wherever you want. Both schools, both will take you. You just need to check your school's policy on early action and early decision. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you. I have another question. Can chance for getting in will be more in November if you choose early decision?
Statistically, especially for early decision, yes. That is the one advantage to early decision, that probability-wise, you are more likely to get in. However, the one problem which I often say to students is your best chance of getting in is when your college application is most ready. So if your college application isn't ready, your likelihood going up isn't necessarily going to benefit you in any way, if that makes sense. So if it is ready by that time, you can go for it, but otherwise, make sure and prioritize the application is ready first.
Kudana, I had another question for you, but that was related to the essay component that you spoke about earlier. You said that it's better to leave your extracurriculars and your grades and everything for the transcript and your general form to describe. But what if your sports is basically what defines who you are? So do you think it's still a good idea to talk about that sport in your essay, or should we like look for some other thing to talk about rather than like our extracurriculars, even though it's like it makes a very important part of your identity?
Oh, that's also a good point. And that'll come down more to when we're doing essays.
Okay.
I won't try to go into too much here. But if your academics is like the most important part, or the test score is the most important part, or like a core part of your identity, feel free to go into it in an essay that allows you, so long as that essay is revealing parts of your character through you explaining the score. So the goal shouldn't be, hey, by the way, I got an A+. It should be, I got an A+. This was how I had to get there. These were the challenges that I overcome, which was really difficult for me. This is what the experience meant to me as a person. So that needs to be, if you are going to go into it in an essay, the essay should be on the focus on what's behind the score. What's the score not telling you? The essay, if it's like a really good math score, the essay shouldn't be about, I'm really good at math. The essay should be about, this is how I got really good at math. And what does that say about me?
Right.
I'm going to move on to the next slide, but feel free to keep asking questions throughout this session. But for now, we're going to move on to the next section. So the next part is picking colleges. This is a part which I will tell you very much I did very wrong. And it's a part that I tell you from experience. So there are 3 core types of schools: safety schools, target schools, reach schools. And this will be the only part of the college application process where I will say that it is mildly acceptable to compare yourself to other students. So safety schools are schools you are more than confident you will get into. And rule of thumb, if your school has an acceptance rate below 30% or 25%, it is not a safety school. No matter how smart you are, Harvard is not a safety school. Target schools are schools you are sure that you would fit very well into. They should be schools that you would be very happy to get into as well. And you should have similar testing scores and GPAs to students there. Likewise, no matter how smart you are, no Ivy League school is a target school under any circumstances. The big thing about the Ivy Leagues is that no matter how smart you are, they do only have acceptance rates between 3 to 8%. And you have to get very lucky in addition to being very smart. But regardless, Ivy League schools, Stanford, University of California, Berkeley, all those schools are not target schools no matter how good your grades are. And finally, reach schools, you would need a bit of luck and you would be surprised and very happy, of course, if you got into these schools. Any school below 10% rate is a reach school. So essentially, there's the main list of colleges that you're targeting and that you want to go for, your hopes and prayer colleges, which you would really, really like to get into, but you know that the odds might not be in your favor, and your backup safety schools, which are guaranteed and that you know with confidence you'll be able to get into. The reason why you want to do this distribution of schools is because you do not want to end up in a situation where you don't get accepted into a college. Everyone eventually gets rejected from a school. It happens to the best of us. I was rejected from the college application school. I was rejected on some of my college applications despite getting into Harvard of all places. It's not just black and white of if you get accepted into the top schools, you'll get accepted everywhere else. You don't want to end up in a situation where you have no college to go to and you have to reapply. And while you're in a safety school, there's so many things you can do. If you're in a safety school or in a target school, you can start building up your GPA or application to even maybe transfer to one of the reach schools that you want to go to later on in the future. But you put yourself in a really disadvantageous position if you're not able to go into any. So some college is better than no college. I think we have some questions in the chat.
Yes, we do. And we have a question from Chinmaya again. She's asking about, okay, except from school teachers, Can you please tell me who are the other people from where we can get our LOR, like counselor or mentors or people like that?
Um, I'm sorry, I just want to double check. What do you mean by LOR?
It's the letter of recommendation.
Oh, letter of recommendation. Good question. So letter of recommendation can come from several people who aren't just the teachers. So you can get a letter of recommendation from your counselor or a mentor. You can get a letter of recommendation from a coach or the leader of an extracurricular activity. You can get a letter of recommendation from your employer, so someone that you work with. You could get like a letter of recommendation from the head of a community member that you're at, whether that be someone in a church, someone in a charity recycling group, etc. You shouldn't try to get recommendations from your parents. While you can, colleges do understand that your parents are going to think that you are the best thing since absolute sliced bread and are going to make it that way in your recommendation. Not saying that you need to have someone who dislikes you to write your recommendation, but they do feel like it's going to be a little out of touch. The most important thing about the recommendation is you want to get the recommendation from one of these leader staff member people who know you well. Because if they know you well, they're going to be able to write a detailed recommendation rather than a recommendation of, oh, Kudana, they're cool, they're nice, I heard they did this, pretty good, you should take them, right? If someone's able to describe you in detail and show off about you and clearly describe that they know you and they know what you've done, that's very important. So counselor and mentor are good so long as you have a relationship and you know the counselor and mentor. Likewise with employers or community members. Do not try to avoid situations where you write the recommendation yourself. Please do not write the recommendation yourself. One, because people reading college applications, they can tell. They know the difference between someone who has been working 10 years professionally and has a career writing a recommendation and a high school student. And B, it becomes very clear like when someone's describing you clearly versus when someone is describing you clearly based on like external factor versus if it's you describing yourself. I see two more questions, which I think I could answer. Does being
There
well,
yeah, I mean, there are three, I think.
yeah,
Yeah.
does being well-rounded hurt? No, I'm a well-rounded. I think I describe myself as a well-rounded student. I did a lot in various places. It doesn't hurt so long as, and in fact, it's going to depend on your school's values, what they tend to stress. Like I know something MIT finds really, really important in their students is the ability to stretch themselves, as they say. So for looking for students who really push themselves. Other schools might be looking for students who specialize in one or two things. So being well-rounded shouldn't hurt. Are there any more questions? I think my chat is still loading up.
Okay, yeah. So the other question was, is it true that there will be more chance if you are from the LGBT community for you to get accepted, I guess?
Statistically, I'll be honest here, I'm not exactly sure. Oh, I will tell you this. Being a part of of a minority group, while schools do often look for diversification, that doesn't inherently increase your chances of getting in, especially because if you're in a minority group of some kind, it means that you're already a minority. But that's not going to radically change your application. And there's rarely like minority statistic because again, they're looking for good students overall. And there are other students. There are like thousands upon thousands upon thousands upon thousands of people who are applying to college applications. And of course, while showing your identity is obviously the more important part of your application, no inherent background is going to give you a greater chance of getting accepted into schools. Unless the school has like a particular diversity outreach program, which you're also applying to.
Mm-hmm. The other question is, how do you apply to 23 universities? I can apply for no more than 20 universities in the common application.
Right. So first of all, you shouldn't apply to 23 universities, and you shouldn't apply to more than 20. But, and I hope you aren't taking this recommendation to go do it. But, so you can only apply to 20 universities on the Common App. But as we'll get into in other application forms, there's more, you can use more than the Common App to apply to schools. So what I did 20 on the Common App, a few on the UC app, the MIT application, and there was another type of college application. And some schools you can apply using their own custom application, which I did for about 5 or 6 schools. So that's how I did that. I did 5 or 6 schools on their own unique application, and then 20 schools on the Common App. Don't do 20. I'm about to break down why. Don't do 20.
Okay, great. And then, okay, were you gonna say something else, Kudana?
Can some I'm seeing, can
Okay.
some students get into MIT or Harvard as a transfer student after 2.5 years of UG? Yes. Harvard loves transfer students, especially because Harvard and MIT love transfer students, especially because they have a big emphasis on research. They're private research institutions. They love people looking to get their master's degree or their PhD at graduate school level. Harvard community full of transfer students. So you are always, so if you are really set on no matter what I must get into Harvard, still apply to target and safeties, there are ways to get there. Almost all of the mentors which I have at Harvard who have mentored me as master's or PhD students, as co-students, all came from other universities actually. They were working, got professional experience, did great at their respective schools, and then decided, oh, I actually want to come by to Harvard. And that's how they got there. So don't feel like, oh, because I wasn't prepared in high school, I can never go to Harvard ever. Harvard students range from like age 14 to age like 70. So Harvard is always open. And that includes for transferring from a school. All right, I'll be moving on in the slide. So, narrowing down schools, how do we get down from 23? First of all, how do I know which school is a safety, target, or reach? I don't want anyone to stay on this website for too long, but prepscholar.com gives the average GPA and SAT score of schools. You can use that to see if your scores are above average, then that school is a safety. If your scores are right around the average, that school is a target. And then if your scores are below the average of the other student, then that school is a reach. I wouldn't recommend staying on that site because that is a very quick way to start looking at your scores and be like, oh my gosh, I can never possibly get into this school. So I wouldn't spend too much time on admission statistics. For what's a good number of schools, 8 to 12 is a good number. Don't try to apply to more than 16. Definitely don't do 20. Definitely don't do 23 or 25. And then if you're looking for how to make the schools list, start with 20 schools you would consider and narrow it down based on fit and key factors, which are very important to you. All right. Building your application. Remember, you are not alone. A lot of this is brought up during the questions, but when building your application, you got the help of family, friends, teachers, the school advisor, right? People in your circle who know about you and know how to make what makes you stick out on the paper. when learning about schools, if you're looking for more details about colleges, you obviously have this webinar and the GTL community if you decide to join us. But you also have professors, current students at the school you can reach out to, and again, your school advisor. Note that in both building the application and learning about schools, the school advisor shows up. That is because the school advisor or the school counselor is one of the most important people in your college application. If you haven't met your student counselor or student advisor, you should go meet your student counselor / advisor ASAP. They've seen college applications, but more importantly, they've seen college applications from your school and from your country. So while I might not know about what your school curriculum looks like and what your school testing policy looks like, or how your students will transfer grades to the US college application system, your advisor, who has definitely had other students apply to the US before, is going to have that information on lock. They're going to know which files to send, what timeline to do, which is legally binding, what to do about things like visas and financial aid for people in your respective school area or country, and what to do based on your grade situation. If you have like one professor at your school who is just known for failing students, the advisor is going to know how to get that across. Likewise, if you have something which is so unique and special about your school curriculum, which other schools aren't doing and makes your experience unique, your school advisor is also going to know about that. So get in touch with your school advisor as soon as you can. Now, in terms of the actual two testing mechanisms, we've discussed this again more during questions, but the SAT is the leading option for standardized testing in the United States. It's made up of two components, a math component and a reading/writing component. It is okay if you don't do necessarily well on one of the two components. You should obviously try your best. But I do know some international curriculums have a lot of specialization. But there's the math component and the reading/writing component. You can take the SAT multiple times, and some schools will take what is known as a super score. So a super score is when they take your best math score. Let's say if I've taken the SAT 3 times, I got 660, 700, and 750 in math, and 720, 610, and 730 in English. They'll take the 750 in math and the 730 in English, even if they were taken at separate times. This again depends on your school's SAT testing policy, but a lot of schools are now taking the best of your SAT scores. If you are looking for SAT practice, while there are of course SAT practice guides and textbooks out there, Khan Academy also has free SAT practice where you can practice hundreds of questions and practice the overall flow of the SAT. So I would recommend that. And the most important thing about the SAT is you just need to practice it to get a sense of the timing, get a sense of the actual test taking strategies, and be able to move really quickly. What are the AP exams MIT, Harvard, or most of the top Ivy Leagues ask for? So this is really important. Most of the top Ivy Leagues are not actually super interested in a particular AP exam. If you can take an AP exam to demonstrate really enhanced knowledge, you should go for it. But there's no particular AP or next level exam, especially because everyone goes to these really top Ivy League schools with different subjects in mind. So it doesn't make sense if my interest is government to take AP computer science, or if my interest is in electrical engineering and then I took AP Spanish and AP history. Also, from College Board's experience this year and all the various things which ended up happening with AP and selective testing is that more and more schools, honestly to this day, care less and less about the AP exams due to how the AP exams were handled last year. So while you can do it, and again, it's about presenting yourself in a different light, it will not actually become what says, it will not be the no say on your application. And I will tell you straight up, it's also not often available for international students. While the SAT is often available, AP is often not. And so they keep that in consideration. I did no AP exams during my college application process. I did do SAT2s, the special tests for specific subjects, but even those were eventually discontinued. So you have it available. You can use it to show special knowledge in a specific way, but it'll be taken equally. It will never be a no say, and the schools aren't looking for a specific exam. The ACT is another standardized testing method. You can see the differences between the two tests by also going to blog.prepscholar.com/ACT versus SAT. Many colleges have also removed the standardized testing requirement altogether and are happy to accept A-level, IB, or even your regular report card. But again, please check your school's respective testing policy. But to reiterate, if you are going to take a standardized test like the SAT or ACT, the most important thing is to practice the questions and get used to the speed and flow and the types of questions. Understand the two components in your school's SAT policy, and recognize that other tests can be used to show particular knowledge, but outside of these two, they're not really going to be hunting down and saying that if you don't have an AP exam, you can't do it. Essays. This is arguably the most important part of the college application, and one of the parts of the college application which tends to scare more people. I think I remember there was a little survey that was interviewed on like what would people be more afraid of, and it was like death or public speaking, and most people picked public speaking. Talking and writing are often the things that people struggle with the most. I'm here to tell you, when it comes down to essays, you've already done all of the work needed for college application essays. College application essays are about expressing your past experiences and your own personal experiences. So one, you do not need to invent a persona or a character. And two, you need to communicate experiences in your own voice. You do not need to be William Shakespeare to write a college application essay. In fact, your college application will be all the better if you write as you traditionally tend to write, if you write in your voice. And so I often tell this, especially given to international students or students who don't inherently have like an English first speaking background, but also to students in general. You don't need to have perfect English and perfect writing to write an essay. Essays are less a measure of your English abilities, though that does measure your writing to an extent, more about communicating your experiences, right? So if you communicate ideas in the ways only you can communicate ideas, that's what makes your essay unique. Don't stress about having to tell some like super amazing story which has never been told before. You just need to go into detail about your life, which have already happened to you. And you just need to get pen to paper. Now, I also understand getting pen to paper is also the really hard part. You can have an idea perfectly formed in your head, and you just don't know how to write it down. So what do? What if there's some common questions and some common answers here, which we can look at. But before I do, I'm going to have a look at one of the questions we sent in chat. All the people that are at MIT who use to select students, well, what do they want to have in our essays? So Here's a great place to start. Often, your schools will include a list of values that they have as a school, right? This isn't we're looking for this, we're looking for this, we're looking for this, but it's like MIT loves collaboration. MIT loves, I remember MIT is the biggest one. MIT loves collaboration. They love students who stretch themselves. They love they love intellectual curiosity. Those are really important things to MIT. It's what makes MIT MIT. Now, with your Common App, you shouldn't be writing a Common App essay for the one school, but in specialized apps, you definitely should. Many of the schools that you apply to will take your overall Common App as well as other applications, as well as other essays. And in those other essays, while you obviously should talk about yourself, you want to talk about yourself and highlight some of the values that they're looking for. So if I'm talking about an academic group project that I've had, I would like to highlight and focus on collaboration, which is something that MIT really likes. If I'm writing an essay about research or learning something new, I would like to highlight academic curiosity, which I know MIT really likes. If I'm talking about stressful experiences I've had, I want to talk about the struggles I've had about stretching myself and doing a lot of things trying to become well-rounded, which is something MIT really likes. Or, again, because MIT likes people who are able to fail and fail faster, as their values are, I might want to talk about an experience where I failed before and what I've learned from that failure. So I'm using MIT as the example. That's what MIT in particular is often looking for in their applicants. But this procedure goes for all schools. If you're ever looking, how can I better hone my essay towards the school that I'm applying to? Often look for your school's values. What is your school looking for in traditional students or in their community? They'll put it straight up on their website. They won't try to hide it behind, if like you're looking for Harvard, you need to secretly have this character which nobody knows about. They're very open about what matters to them in their community. You just need to show those community values. So, on that note, also, one word of advice which is really important. There's two main essay types. There's your Common App general essay, which goes to every school you apply to on the Common App. And there's your selection essays, which are unique to the schools you're applying to. Please do not put a school name in your Common App. And at college essay, which goes to everyone. There have been a lot of really funny but unfortunate cases where someone has put, and this is why I really want to go to Harvard, in their common application essay. And then that Common App goes to all the schools. And it's a really bad look if Yale is really, really enjoying you. And then it's like, this is why I want to go to Harvard. Oh, okay. Northeastern, this is why I really want to go to Harvard. Oh, unfortunate. This is why I really want to. You don't want to do that. So in your Common App, you don't want to mention any school. Design that for everyone. And it's only in your unique selection essays, which are unique to every school, where you find and you can specialize more. Some common areas. If English is your second language and you struggle with writing, my recommendation there, do your best. So long as you communicate your emotions and experience as best you can, English differences and unfamiliarity in how you speak won't be punished in essays. Millions of applicants are ESL students, and millions of people who I know at college and who I'm friends with are English as second language students. So if you feel like you're not sounding like an American specifically, don't worry. If you have writer's block or you can't settle on an essay prompt, jot down ideas as they come. You can write about unrelated experiences to get the ideas flowing. Something that I had when I was doing college applications is I just have a scratch pad. And I would just be writing my thoughts down, writing about other stories in my life, even if it might not be the super big college application story which I'm trying to write about. That'll be a good way to get the flow going. What if you don't know what to write about? This is where your circle comes in. Sometimes friends, family, and the people closest to us can remind us about which experiences were really big moments in our lives. Something which we might find really small might be really meaningful and important and impactful to someone else. And finally, Kudana, if you really, really can't write, if you're better at talking and telling stories and you really struggle with writing, you can use a text-to-speech app or your phone to just say a story out loud, record yourself talking about that story, and then use that audio as the template for your essay. Obviously, you then want to do grammar checks and spelling checks, and that'll definitely be really important. And you want to double check that you've done all your essays. But I do know sometimes recording ourselves telling a story or telling our story to someone that we already know will be much, much easier, will make it much, much easier to write the essay. All right, we have a question in the chat. While giving SAT subject tests, which subject should I go for? Math 1 or Math 2? If I'm not mistaken, I think the subject tests were discontinued last year. Let me check. So yeah, I had a feeling about this. Obviously, this is one Google search, so please just double check. But yes, at the beginning of January, College Board announced that they will no longer be offering SAT subject tests. They are no longer offering them. Provide two. They will offer 2 more administrations in May and June of 2021, but I think those have already passed. And those were designed because there are other institutions, not even colleges, which can also use the SAT subject test. So I know some places use it to test like math or English or language abilities. But from my knowledge, the SAT subject test is canceled. Now, for whatever reason, if something does come up and there's a specialization between the two, Math 1 tends to test algebra, Math 2 tends to test calculus. Math 2 at the time was the harder one, and it was the one that more schools were looking for, just because most high schools cover algebra. They were more interested in seeing where your calculus ability was at. So if for whatever reason something does happen, I'd recommend trying some sample tests, seeing where your level is at. And Math 1 would be easier. Math 2 would be more widely accepted and looked for. But again, the subject test should be canceled for the most part. Moving on to financial aid. Sorry. Unfortunately, I didn't have like a morning cup of tea. So my voice ends up getting really, really raspy the longer I talk.
That's okay, Kudana.
There are 2 core types of aid. Needs-based financial aid, which is based on your family's financial need, and merit-based financial aid, which is based on student achievements. Yes, we can attach the presentation at the end of the call. So if there are two types of financial aid. The first thing I'd like to tell everyone is that the Ivy League does not give out merit-based aid for good reason. So if Harvard's looking at students, right, for example, all of the Ivy League students, for the most part, are coming from a really competitive academic background. A lot of people have straight A's, yada, yada, yada. So it's very difficult to say, all right, this student who got straight A's deserves more money over this student who also got straight A's. So they don't do that. They do needs-based financial aid, which is looking at your family's financial situation and then evaluating how much money does the school need to give you in order to get through college. Some schools have a policy which is basically where they commit to fulfilling 100% of your demonstrated need, which is saying, if you need to afford to get here, we will help you get there, no matter how much it costs. But that is specific for the Ivy League. That is not all schools. That is not often what happens with a lot of target schools and a lot of safety schools. So if you're a U.S. citizen, you can use the FAFSA application to apply for federal financial aid. And regardless of if you're a U.S. citizen, you can use the CSS application to apply for non-federal financial aid. My big recommendation is have an honest conversation with your parents early about your financial situation so that you can effectively plan for college. This is the one time where I definitely say, ask your family and get a sense about where you are financially, because finances do play an important part in the college decision-making process. And you and your family need to work together, not inherently to say that you can't go to a specific school, but more if you do want to get to a specific school, how do we start working to get there? If you're looking for merit-based applications, there will be a section on the Common App which has a search to look for merit-based applications. And you can also look up scholarships for students coming from your respective country, from your respective city or area. But universally, everyone is able to apply for non-federal financial aid. Do we have any questions?
No, not right now.
Okay. So you've submitted your essays, you've submitted your financial aid application, and you've submitted your grades. Now, the weeks after the send, what happens next? If you're still in school, I implore you, please keep your grades up. A lot of American students have this thing called senioritis, where essentially they apply to colleges and they're like, okay, I don't care anymore. I've applied to colleges. None of this matters. Your counselor will still be sending updates to your school here and there. Often your school will reach out to your counselor like, hey, we heard these good things about your student. Could you verify them? Are they true? Could you send us a little bit more information about your grading policy so we can understand your student's application more? Do you think your student would like to come here, etc.? Your school is usually reaching out to your counselor pretty often, even after you've applied. As a result, if you're on really, really bad behavior or your grades absolutely tumble down, your counselor might have to let your school know, or your school might call in to say, hey, is this student's grade still going okay, or did they only try hard to get into our school and now they've stopped caring? Your counselor likewise also has some reasons as to letting a school know if you suddenly go on bad behavior. Think about your counselor's perspective. Your counselor will be getting your generation of classmates into colleges, will be getting another group of classes into colleges, and more classes and more classes and more classes year after year after year. As a result, your counselor's reputation means a lot, and it's very important, because if your reputation is good, then your counselor's word plays a lot better of a role and they can help other students get into colleges. If a counselor lies about you or lies about your behavior, their reputation goes down and it hurts future students' abilities to apply to colleges with that counselor's help. So please try to keep your grades up and your behavior up after the college application has been sent. If anything exciting happens between now and decision deadlines, use the appropriate tools to update your school. Sometimes one of the more important things will be happening in your life, one of the most successful things, won't just be happening right in December or right in November. An example I'll use in my case is before college application results came out in April, in December, after I had already submitted my college applications, I got a full-time job as a software engineer. And that was a really, really big experience. That would be something which also would make me stand out from other students. And so all the schools that I applied to, Harvard, MIT, etc., they had an update portal. Most schools will have an update portal where you can submit some document where you can tell them what has happened in your life recently. It can be used for emergency, it can be used to change something on the application, etc. But you can use it to tell the school, hey, since I've applied, I've gotten a job, I've been working in this field, I made this achievement, I won this award at school. If you're doing Cambridge A-level and your grades come out in January after you wrote in October, you can give them a grades update, I aced my exam, etc. So use the college applications update materials to keep your schools updated. Interviews will also eventually come after college applications happen. I wouldn't say don't stress out about them too much. There are several like arts to interviews and guides that you can give, but my number one advice actually for college interviews is be yourself and just be okay with having a conversation. You should do your best to try to talk like a normal human being, because the actual goals of interviews isn't to like test you and see if you know everything about the school or see if you're this super intellectual person. The point of the interview is actually just to see, are you the person on the application? So if you write in your application, I'm a cool, relaxed person, they just want to see in the interview, are you the cool, relaxed person that you say? The actual situation that they're trying to avoid with the interview is they're trying to avoid the situations where someone is like, I cured cancer, I write like Shakespeare, and I swim in the Olympics. And then they meet the person in real life, they can't walk up the stairs, they don't write like Shakespeare, and they are yet to cure cancer, right? I will also tell you that in terms of students rejected off an interview, most colleges say that there's like only about 20 to 30 people where after the interview, they are like, no, we don't want this student. And those are the examples which I have listed. The interview is rarely ever the do or die or the no say in your college application. They just want to use the interview to say, hey, we understand this person more and we understand how this person goes. There's almost rarely ever such thing as a bad interview. No one looks at the interview and is like, okay, no. And final recommendation, spend time with friends and family. My personal recommendation, stay off of social media and college application websites, especially around the college acceptance day. I know it can be a really rough feeling looking at people around you and they're doing X, Y, Z and all these college applications, and that might cause you to start stressing out. Focus on the people that matter. Question, what is the possible average GPA MIT accepts for? I'm not sure. I think statistically, they tend to aim towards an A or A minus, but MIT is definitely the #1 of the super elite Ivy League schools that accepts like a huge grade range. Because MIT is one of the schools that's really like, is genuinely looking for, are you okay with failure? It's a really big part of engineers. They're more concerned if, are you willing to learn something new? And are you experimenting, trying research, doing all this other stuff? If you have an application which is like, I tried all this research and I got like D's and F's in my class because I tried all these new things and these are the new things I tried, you will have a very high chance of getting into MIT. So MIT is the one case where I'd say, even though a lot of students lean towards like an A minus, an A roughly, it has a really huge GPA spectrum. And that's about it. So to reiterate on the core principles, focus on presenting yourself in the best way possible. Don't apply to too many colleges. Always value giving yourself options. Try to reveal as much as your character as you can through experiences, through your values, etc. And try to get help from the people around you. But overall, the college application process is for everyone. I just wanted to demystify that a bit and just know, regardless of when you're starting or where you're coming from, anyone can apply to United States College. This will now be the open Q&A section. But before we go, before we get into Q&A, we just want to make a little bit of room to talk a bit about GTL. So GTL here is a learning community with other students who are, many of whom are also going to the universities which have been discussed today, such as Stanford, such as MIT, such as Yale, and many other locations. We're spread across throughout the world. If you're ever looking for a learning community, for the types of students who would read over your college applications, give you more information about the school that you're applying to, and provide a learning community, whether it be tutoring, learning a new language, addressing academic challenges, or going through learning goals, I personally think GTL would be the perfect place to join. So if you're looking to meet and work with people like me, Yuta, and many more students across universities around the world, I would highly recommend joining us here at GTL Community, and we'd be happy to work with you.
Absolutely. And I've also shared a learner intake form on the chat. So if you have not already filled that form, then please feel free to fill it out, and we can schedule one-on-one sessions with you and help you out with any sort of an academic requirement that you may have. So moving on to the Q&A section, does anybody have like a question that they would like to ask, or any questions about the application process or about GTL? We'd be happy to answer for you.
Q&A is 100% open, by the way. You can ask questions about my school, my own application, details, nothing is off the table.
You can either post on the chat or unmute yourself if you want.
I think someone is currently typing in the chat.
I think so too.
I certainly hope if there's one takeaway, please don't apply to like 25 schools. Yeah, we'll wait for this question in the chat. Also, feel free to unmute as well. I'm going to stop screen share and so there's a girl here in India who's been to MIT. She hadn't completed their schooling. They didn't have 10th and 12th grade. How could they make it to MIT? So again, MIT is, I'd say again, one of the schools which are very, very open about how you can get there. Some schools do not have a requirement that you reach a specific grade in order to graduate, in order to apply. While some schools will require that you are a high school graduate, many students are allowed to apply at 10th grade, apply at 11th grade, apply at 12th, apply at 9th. It's just about when they read your application, they will determine whether or not you are at a college level. So what that looks like is SATs. If that student's recommendations stated that they're at a college level at the moment, and if MIT determines that. So you can apply to MIT super early. The odds of you getting into MIT before completing high school are not extremely likely, but I'd say one other thing is that if you were going to get into MIT before completing high school, you would get into MIT after completing high school. Because the big thing is about having your application at its strongest, right? And I'd also like to say this. Child prodigies or people who apply at college at like 14 and 15 do not have a greater chance of getting in. Schools are not particularly looking for younger students. In fact, sometimes the opposite. College students need to be able to live on their own, live in dorms, interact with adults, and live away from home. Schools aren't always super confident that 15-year-olds and 14-year-olds are ready for those types of expectations. So it's not just about, does someone have the grades? Okay, take them. It's also about, will this person function in a college environment? So please don't think that like if you don't apply at 15 or 14, your chances of getting accepted into the school go down by 30%. That's not the case. I was also in a position where I was considering applying for college at 18, because my school's academic calendar would end in December, which might put me a little bit behind. But I decided honestly to finish out my high school year, do like prefecthood and all the student leadership stuff, things that come with senior year, and then apply to colleges. No, she has not been to school. She just left it when she was in class 7th.
I think it's seventh, like seventh, the grade 7.
Oh, grade 7. They have not been, as in they're homeschooled, or? Very interesting. I have to meet this person. That person definitely sounds like unique. Is a 3.89 a good GPA for Harvard? Yes. Yes, it is. If you're above like a 3.5 or a 3.6, you can definitely go for it. I definitely say, which country are you coming from right now? Because Yuta, do you know which country Dinar is coming from?
Kazakhstan.
Kazakhstan, right? So I'd say overall 3.89, already great GPA regardless of where you're at. You should definitely be fine with that type of GPA. But yeah, but 3.89, definitely, that's really, really good. Let's see, sorry, I'm going to disable screen share. There we go. And Google this person. But yeah, any more questions? Okay, so does not have a class 10 or class 12 certificate. Thanks to yeah, that's really also competed in the International Olympiad for programming, which is really good. In general was doing programming engineering work before then. Yeah, really inspiring story. It also looks like they were homeschooled as well. So they didn't have a 10th or 12th standards certificate, but it was okay. They were still homeschooled in the end. You don't have to necessarily do your country's academic standard in order to apply to international universities. So the United States isn't going to look at India's class 12 or class 10 certificate and say that if you don't have those specifically, you will not be allowed to apply to our colleges. They obviously help, but as you can see, it's not a one-size-fits-all case. Where can they get letters of recommendations? What most likely happened, they got letters of recommendations from people in the respective Olympiad, programming teachers. In this situation, they might get one from their parents. Again, probably wouldn't recommend it, but it definitely looks like they got recommendations from people in the CMI organization and people from the Informatics Olympiad and those types of circles. So again, professional circles where you study, tutoring groups, maybe even someone from GTL if you decide to join this community. But it looks like from what's being described in the story, they likely got recommendations from people that they were doing engineering with. Though I am not 100% sure, yet to meet this person, but I'm assuming that's where they might have gotten recommendations from.
So if we don't have any more questions, then we can end the session. But before that, I would just like to bring your attention once more to the intake form. If you have not filled it, then feel free to fill it and we will get in touch with you, and you can learn more about GTL from our website as well. There'll be one-on-one sessions if you're interested in joining us, and you'll find more information about us in our Microsoft Teams. So if once you fill out the intake form, you will get an invite to our Teams community, and then you can look at the profiles of all the linkers who are present in the GTL community. So Kudana is one of them. We have other linkers from different colleges, and you can choose a linker of your choice, say a linker who's going to your dream college, and then they could guide you. So feel free to reach out to us, and we will be happy to revert and hopefully stay in touch with you guys.